Matthew Paikada. Father Matthew is a life member of the Order of Friars Minor, Capuchin, OFM camp. Currently, he is a missionary in a rural area in Chhattisgarh. He is a theologian by training. He has been a professor in theology and rector of their major seminary. He was also the minister provincial of their province. The recent encyclical of Pope Francis, Fratelli Tutti, the world considers is a landmark document with great universal relevance in the context of the pandemic, but also beyond the pandemic. And in the context of this document, Father Matthew has written a great deal on it, has reflected a great deal on it, and he will speak to us on our role as catalysts of interreligious and intercultural dialogue, drawing inspiration from the encyclical, because that is a thrust area as far as our congregation is concerned. The last general chapter particularly emphasized on the intercultural and interreligious dialogue as a priority mission of the Brothers of St. Gabriel. Pope Francis deliberated on this in the encyclical Fratelli Tutti. Father Matthew.
Thank you, Brother Varghese. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, sir, it's fine.
Okay. So thank you very much for your kind introduction. I'm glad to be here with you all because as I know, Brother Varghese and some of his companions in Montfort community, you are all excellent in social work and real involvement with the people and their problems. And I feel very much privileged to be with you. And I, as a Franciscan, also feel closer to you as a brother. I'm Brother Matthew. And as missionary disciples, as Pope Francis would call us all, we are all united. And so I'm happy to speak something on the new encyclical of Pope Francis, Fratelli Tutti. And I would like to present it from the perspective of interreligious dialogue. So let me start right away. At times, an apparently insignificant incident in our life can have unprecedented consequence in our lives. The same is true of history too. What happens in the fringes of world history can assume unparalleled significance for the course of history. The meeting between Francis of Assisi, an adventurous and innovative religious vagabond, and the powerful but good-natured Malik al-Kamal, the Sultan of Egypt, at Damietta on the delta of River Niles in the year 1219, at the height of the Fifth Crusade, was such an incident. Although both were honestly serious about saving their souls, they were now engaged in a dialogue in order to save the lives of people from the atrocities of war. Although 800 years have passed, the relevance of that meeting never faded. Ever since, the essential link between saving one's soul and saving the lives of people remained the golden rule of authentic spirituality. No war is holy. No war can be just. No war brings success. No war can establish peace. Every war is born of hatred and breeds hatred. Every war is inflamed by lies and spread lies. Every war abuses religion. Every war takes our history of civilization back to barbarism. In his recent encyclical Fratelli Tutti, Pope Francis takes inspiration from this event to invite all, every person of goodwill, to think with him and join hands for the realization of justice and reconciliation, dignity and freedom, harmony and joy in the world of our times. He makes the expression of St. Francis his own and speaks of a way of life
marked by the flavor of the gospel, leading humanity to a universal fraternal openness, transcending the differences of origin, nationality, color, or religion of the people. Pope Francis presents Fratelli Tutti as a social encyclical in the great tradition of his predecessors of Leo XIII, who wrote the Rerum Novarum, the first social encyclical, Saint Paul VI, who wrote Populorum Progressio, Saint John Paul II, who wrote Centesimus Annus, and quite a few others. However, Pope Francis sticks to his own inimitable style, which is direct and simple, at the same time persuasive in this encyclical. Now, coming to the salient features of Fratelli Tutti, let me try to give a short overview of the encyclical, mainly from the perspective of the interreligious dialogue and cooperation. Fratelli Tutti has 8 chapters and 2 prayers at the end of it, 287 paragraphs with 288 footnotes, out of which not less than half are from his own writings and talks. So it may be characterized as a summary of the papal teachings so far. In fact, the relevance of the encyclical will be clear when we read the first chapter, which gives a rather detailed analysis of the situation of the world today. In this chapter, titled Dark Clouds Over a Closed World, Pope Francis highlights the serious consequences of the divisive and isolationist tendencies growing stronger than ever in front of our eyes. In the situation of the Crusades of the Middle Ages, he sees a parallel to our times. When he writes, I quote, "We encounter the temptation to build a culture of walls, to raise walls, walls in the heart, walls on the land, in order to prevent this encounter with other cultures, with other people. And those who raise walls will end up slaves within the very walls they have built. They are left without horizons, or they lack this interchange with others." Quote ends. The revolutionary developments in communication technology and globalization actually did not usher in the promised global community in which everyone could take a legitimate share. Unfortunately, the technological and scientific progress did not lead to an egalitarian society in which dignity of every human life, whether rich or poor, literate or illiterate, healthy or weak, powerful or powerless, born or unborn, is respected and promoted, the Pope points out. The acknowledgement of this dignity is the basis of all service of justice and charity in Christianity. It is precisely here that we find dark clouds gathering over our heads and doors being closed to our fellow human beings. The so-called unproductive people are considered useless and a burden to society and family. This is a sign of severe moral decadence of our day. How can and how should the religions respond to this situation? This is the question that the Pope takes up in this encyclical. Religions are often accused of being the cause of much of the problems. Can they now be part of the solutions? That is a question that we have to take up, and that is what the Pope is speaking about. Now, coming to the next chapter, the Pope is providing us light. True Christian hope in a cloudy, desperate, and depressing situation is consumeristic. He invites and almost demands us to spread a ray of hope by providing the example of the Good Samaritan. However, it is interesting to note that Pope Francis is focusing on the stranger on the road who is robbed, wounded, and abandoned. That makes a big difference. The Pope gives extensive reflection on all the characters of this story. Commenting on the priest and the Levite in the story, the Pope writes, I quote, "It shows that belief in God and the worship of God are not enough to ensure that we are actually living in a way pleasing to God. A believer may be untrue to everything that his faith demands of him, and yet think he is close to God and better than others. The quote ends. The Pope is here highlighting a case where religion failed. An open fraternal dialogue between believers in different religions can be mutually enriching for introspection and correction. Probably we need to remind each other this fact. Now, coming to the third and the fourth chapters, the Pope speaks on the need to envisage and engender an open world and to open our hearts to the whole world. The Pope speaks about the harm being done by the liberal capitalism and about the need to go beyond sporadic acts of charity and the urgency to engage in a true life of solidarity with the underprivileged, the impoverished, and above all, with the victims of injustice. Here, he uses the expressions political charity and social charity, which will have structural consequences in the society. Coming to the fifth chapter, the Pope continues with the theme of universal solidarity under the unusual title, A Better Kind of Politics. Now, better politics, the Pope says, should guarantee the dignity and justice of every human being. He introduces the term tenderness that indirectly conveys what we usually call a preferential option in liberation theology. Listen to his words. Politics too must make room for tender love of others. What is tenderness? Tenderness is the path of choice for the strongest, most courageous men and women. Amid the daily concerns of political life, the smallest, the weakest, the poorest should touch our hearts. Indeed, they have a right to appeal to our heart and soul. The quotation ends. Now, we know that the quality of democracy is measured by the security and equity enjoyed by the minority groups in a country. Otherwise, it will be autocracy of the majority. In fact, these people, the smallest, the weakest, and the poorest, and their concerns should become the matter of urgent concern for believers of all religions and non-believers alike. This precisely is the theme of the sixth chapter, where he speaks about dialogue, encounter, and friendship, contributing towards global fraternity and harmony. He gives a simple but comprehensive explanation for the term dialogue. I quote, approaching, speaking, listening, looking at, coming to know and understand one another, and to find common ground. All these things are summed up in the one word, dialogue. The quotation ends. Just as he introduced the term tenderness in the previous chapter, in his typical Franciscan style, the Pope introduces the term kindness into the context of dialogue and encounter. Kindness, he says, frees us from the cruelty that at times infect human relationships, from the anxiety that prevents us from thinking of others, from the frantic flurry of activity that forgets that others also have a right to be happy. Kindness ought to be cultivated. It is no superficial bourgeois virtue, precisely because it entails esteem and respect for others. Once kindness becomes a culture within society, it transforms lifestyles, relationships, and the ways ideas are discussed and compared. Kindness facilitates the quest for consensus, writes the Pope. Now, the seventh chapter is devoted to paths of renewed encounter characterized by reconciliation and compassion. However, it is significant that Pope makes it clear that every social conflict and protest cannot be condemned in the name of peace and forgiveness, because it may go against human dignity and justice. At the same time, Pope calls war and death penalty wrong answers and false solutions, even in extreme situations. He affirms an emphatic no to all arguments in favor of the so-called just war and death penalty. Now, coming to the concluding chapter, that is titled Religions at the Service of Global Fraternity, the Pope clarifies and affirms his position regarding the role of religion in the face of growing religious fanaticism, as well as antipathy, antagonism, and competition between religions. It is a clear affirmation that religions are not for their own sake. I would like to repeat it. Religions are not for their own sake. Just as church holds the position that church is not for its own sake, but for the sake of the realization of the plan of God here on earth. In the reign of God, in the plan of God, no one is a stranger and no one is superfluous. Believers in every religion should put their heads together and join hands for the welfare of all the people in this world. We are aware of the growing intolerance and resulting extremism causing division and violence in the society. We should not be reluctant to learn from history that every instance of the defense of the church was not always a defense of Jesus and his gospel. It is true that today, occasionally, we are faced with inhuman persecutions and malicious propaganda against the church. However, the Christian response cannot be to retort and to pay back with the same coin, but to stick on to the path of Jesus and his attitude, as we have it in Paul's letter to the Philippians, chapter 2, 4-8. We are called and we are challenged to follow him honestly, closely, although it will not be easy. Now, let me just share with you a little reflection on interreligious dialogue. The Catholic Church was fortunate to have an adjournamento, an updating on account of the Second Vatican Council. I'm inclined to say that the world would have been a much better place and in a much better equipped to deal with the present dilemma if all the religions and denominations had such a graceful possibility of renewal, self-renewal. What would have been the state of the church and its activities if not for the Second Vatican Council? One of the most significant contributions of the church in the Second Vatican Council was its reorientation to other religions of the world. Quoting from the Declaration Nostra Aetate of Vatican II, number 2, Pope writes, I quote, "The Church esteems the way in which God works in other religions and rejects nothing of what is true and holy in these religions. She has a high regard for their manner of life and conduct, their precepts and doctrines, which often reflect an array of that truth which enlightens all men and women." The quotation ends. Is it not a position that can be shared by all other religions too? At times, the Christian initiative for interreligious dialogue was misunderstood and misinterpreted as an embrace of Dhritarashtra, the annihilation through a deceitful embrace. However, interreligious dialogue has to go on. The history of interreligious dialogue has been a slow and difficult but fruitful and necessary learning process. In the beginning, the attention was on a comparative study of the scriptures, and that did not make much headway. And afterwards, the attention was on a prayer, common prayer of believers in various religions coming together and praying together. And that also did not find much appeal. And then the third stage was actually people of different religions coming together to work together for the welfare of all, for the welfare of the society. So the history of interreligious dialogue we find a shift of emphasis from the scriptural and dogmatic to the spiritual and social realms. Pope Francis quotes the words of the bishops of India. I quote, "The goal of dialogue is to establish friendship, peace, and harmony, and to share spiritual and moral values and experiences in a spirit of truth and love." This indeed is a constant challenge in front of us. Interreligious dialogue is not aiming at a creation of a world religion, definitely not. Every religion has its place, and every religion has contributions to make from its own resources, and that should not be forgotten, that should not be denied. It is a firm conviction that all believers are praying to the same God, though in manifold ways, that inspired Saint Pope John Paul II to invite the heads of the world religions to come together and pray for peace and prosperity in the whole world. They were in fact praying, Loka Samasta Sukhino Bhavantu, as it is well expressed in our Indian Hindu tradition. We need to look far beyond the walls that separate and isolate us. The Pope instills hope in us with the words, "A journey of peace is possible between religions. Its point of departure must be God's way of seeing things. God does not see with his eyes, God sees with his heart. And God's love is the same for everyone, regardless of religion." Number 28. My dear brothers and sisters who are listening to me, I would like to say that we in Asia have a special responsibility with regard to the interreligious dialogue. All the major religions, all the major living religions in the world had their origin in Asia, and they are all still alive. The Muslims, the Hindus, the Christians, the Parsis, the Buddhists, people who belong to Judaism, Confucianism, Taoism, Shintoism, all these people all had their origin in Asia, and they are all living in Asia today also. So we have actually an added responsibility to be in the experiment field, to live together with other religions in harmony, working together for the welfare of the whole world, for the whole humanity, and show a way, show light to the whole humanity everywhere, wherever there is antagonism, fight, contempt between religions, etc. So there we have an additional responsibility, and I'm sure that in your response and your planning for tomorrow, you will definitely place accent on this. And from our experience, from our real day-to-day lived experience of neighborhood relationships between religions, we will be able to contribute to the world definitely a lot. Let us hope that there will be more light in this world and the clouds may disappear. I once again thank the organizers, especially Brother Varghese, for inviting me to share my thoughts. Wishing you everything best. God bless you.
Thank you, Father Matthew, Brother Matthew. That was a very insightful reading of the encyclical for us in our context. And the question that Pope Francis asked, can religions become the solution rather than the problem? This, I think, is an extremely important question. And can we stand together? Humanity, if humanity is to be restored to its destiny, we cannot be divided. Religions need to stand together with the best in us so that we are able to find solutions to the degradation of humanity that takes place, especially in the context of Asia, where all these religions have risen. And that aspect of solidarity and dialogue of life, I think this is the most important aspect. And the brothers of St. Gabriel are particularly privileged to be living through this dialogue of life in our mission as educators, as people in social commitments, in counseling. This is our way of life, And I think this is a particular challenge for us. Not everybody likes this encyclical. In fact, I consider this one of the greatest social encyclicals we have had so far. I was reading this morning an article by Dr. Lawrence F. Frankel, who was the former Iran desk officer of the Secretary of Defense of the US, and he calls this encyclical a left-wing political tract. And that's the type of response or reactions that have been, that an encyclical like this that calls for peace, calls for justice, calls for dialogue, calls for the possibility of realizing another world. This is the type of reactions that have been there. So I think this is an important document of response to the present world, the post-pandemic world, that the Brothers of St. Gabriel and our collaborators have to particularly embrace in our mission together. So thank you, Father Matthew.